You know, when I was a newspaper editor, the paper I worked at did not really have an online feature. While I was working there, they started trying to put some stuff online. We used to, per issue at a certain point, select maybe one, two articles, and we would do a tagline of maybe up to three paragraphs from that feature article, put it into the website regarding the time frame of the article, the topic, the headline, and then maybe the one through three paragraphs. The expectation was you would buy the paper and you would read the paper. It was a novel sort of situation in some regards. It wasn't a conventional newspaper. It had a specific purpose and it had a specific understanding of distribution. There were qualifications in order to be able to distribute the newspaper. You had to have a specific kind of experience. And some people valued that. I have up on my desktop right now something I was actually very grateful to find. You see, this specific book here was published in 2012, but like any writer that has particular experience and need to communicate information, you have to footnote your information, what your sources are, and in this case, there were sources cited from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Specific URLs were listed, and I was grateful that those URLs are still active. They literally go to the very documents that he cites, and I will read that excerpt next. But let me just read what the headlines are on these three press releases from the Securities and Exchange Commission. JP Morgan to pay $153.6 million to settle SEC charges of misleading investors in CDO tied to U.S. housing market. Harmed investors getting their money back, firm to pay penalty and change practices. This is dated for June 21st of 2011. We would have had the 10th anniversary of this public notice last month. As a matter of fact, in less than 20 days prior to now, the 10th anniversary of this public notice came due. The next one. Goldman Sachs to pay record $550 million to settle SEC charges related to subprime mortgage CDO. Firm acknowledges CDO marketing materials were incomplete and should have revealed Paulson's role. This is dated for July 15th of 2010. That means that the 11th anniversary on this specific notice is coming up soon, but around the time of the 10th anniversary on the one I just read, if I'm not mistaken. Did not the Supreme Court of the United States issue an opinion specifically about Goldman Sachs when it came to prices and accurate representation of information? The third one is Citigroup to pay $285 million to settle SEC charges for misleading investors about CDO tied to housing market. Former Citigroup employees separately charged for his role in structuring transaction. This one is dated for October 19th of 2011. That means the 10th anniversary on this one is coming due very shortly after now. October 19th is a date that Citigroup knows well. Let me read an excerpt from this book, starting on page 91. Now, in this book, he references a person whose last name is Sachs, Lee Sachs, starting on page 91. Sachs, however, ultimately didn't get either of the Senate-confirmed Treasury positions that had been the subject of rumors. The speculation in the press was that his recent history on Wall Street, where he had reportedly sat atop his firm's CDO management committee, may have made him uncomfortable. Prior to joining the transition team, Sachs had apparently made millions by trafficking in mortgage-related CDOs. In addition to his other responsibilities, the New York Times later reported that Sachs had overseen a subsidiary, Tricadia, which had assembled and sold CDOs to investors in the run up to the crisis. The Times reported that several of those CDOs had experienced heavy losses as the real estate market turned. But though Tricadia's clients had suffered significant losses, according to the Times, the firm had profited handsomely by making bets against the housing market in one of its hedge funds. It was even reported that one of Tricadia's CDOs, which had lost 75% of its value, had been purchased by the New York Fed in November 2008 as part of the AIG bailout. In other words, Sachs had worked at a firm that had successfully exploited the financial crisis and that could potentially profit off of TALF. It later reportedly obtained more than $200 million in TALF loans. Tricadia was not alone in reportedly betting against the real estate market at the same time that it was convincing potential investors to bet in the opposite direction. As investigations by Congress and the Securities and Exchange Commission later detailed, when signs that the real estate bubble might pop began emerging, several banks took this two-sided approach, including Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank. The SEC also accused Citigroup of making a $500 million bet against a bond that it had created, marketed, and sold, while others, such as Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase, settled cases in which the SEC accused them of failing to disclose that bonds they had marketed had essentially been built to fail by investors who were betting against them. Now, there is a case that goes all the way back to the 1980s, a case that individuals later were involved with in a different manner. See, at the time this case was pending in the 1980s, these individuals had a particular position, particular reference point. Both of them have been very, very important lately. They have a different position themselves. Their personal work products that were allowed to remain in circulation, for the most part at least, helped to get them personal advantage in moving up into positions, including positions that would have been appropriated through the federal government, and including in manners that would have required them to provide testimony to Congress. Now, that's happened within the last 5 years. As a matter of fact, I have another book here based on a report that one of them wrote. That specific case, which is the United States versus Felix, discusses the distinction between a concept of double jeopardy and what also allows for the same evidence to be used in an effort to prove more than one crime. It's very important to find that case. It's very relevant right now. I'll be moving forward on this in the best manner I can, personally. It's a very important matter how you understand yourself, what you understand your future prospects are, who you would consider to be your colleagues, and even if you had a disagreement or had to compete with them to advance your own interest or the interest of those whom you represent, what would you do if somebody were to attempt to slander them, to represent that they were willing to engage in crime, including crime that would impugn the character of you as a professional or anybody else with whom you would be associated, including in any pooled collateral consideration, if and when you agree to allow for your human or political capital to be used as a loan